What's up, guys? Last time we added one new feature to our program, which is the ability to hit down and fall through a platform. This was one line of code in the controls, admittedly a very long and ugly line, and it was one new method with a change to our position. And the idea is, that's it. When you change the position, the gravity takes over and does its thing like it already did. And when you hit the next platform or the ground, you stop like you already would have. So even when we add bigger features, like the one we're going to add today, we need to keep them as small as possible and let the rest of the code do its job. We don't want to take over and step on everybody's toes. The feature we're going to add today is different kinds of platforms. Right now they're all vanilla, but we could have, for example, a spring that bounces you, or an elevator that moves you, or a swamp that poisons you. And all of these things are still generally like platforms. You fall on them, you stop, you walk, whatever, but they have extra features as well. So let's look at the platform code, which right now is very simple. We have the init, the initialize, where we tell it, where and how big and what color. And then we have the update, which right now does only one thing, to draw the platform. But we could imagine every frame with other types of platforms. It might move, it might crack if it's a breakable one, or whatever. So let's add a new type, and I'm going to do the spring. I'm going to make it bounce because I think that'll be very simple to start with. I'm going to say class spring. Now I kind of imagine the springs in Sonic that bounce you horizontally. I'm thinking vertically, so maybe I should call it a trampoline, but I don't feel like typing trampoline. I'm going to call it spring, and then in parentheses I'm going to put platform. That means platform is the parent. Spring will inherit everything from platform. So even if I add nothing in there, it's still a basic platform with the ability to add more. For example, if I change these to springs, just to show what would happen, nothing would happen. They're all platforms, and they all work the way platforms already did. If I land on them, I don't bounce because I haven't added that yet, but at least I stop and I can walk and I can do all the things that I already did. So inside of here, we'll add the stuff that's different, like maybe changing the look, or the stuff that's added on top, like a new effect. Let's do that first. Let's say effect, and the reason I'm using that vague name is because I'm going to have more than one. So imagine I've got a spring with a bounce method, and lava with the burn method, and swamp with a poison method. Then the rest of the code has to know, like the guy has to say, if I'm on a spring, I call the bounce, and if I'm on another thing, I do the other thing. And I don't want to have, in fact, I'm not going to write any ifs today. I'm not going to write any ifs. I'm going to say, hey, if the guy's on a platform, do the effect. Whatever it is, the guy doesn't have to know, the rest of the code doesn't have to know. So it's going to take the self, and it's going to take the guy because it might change the guy. And since this is a spring, we'll give him velocity up. Let's make it the same as a jump just to start off with because we know that works. And a jump was 10. So we'll give him a velocity, or no, not self, it's the guy. If I said self, it would be changing the platform. Guy.vy is -10. Remember, minus is up because 0, 0 is the top left. I know that's weird. It'll always be weird. So if I say, all right, they're all springs right now, but they're not running the effect, right? We need to say, hey, we got to do that effect. The guy is checking for the collision. I don't want to have somebody else also check for collision, so we'll just build this in here. We'll say platform.effect, and it needs to send itself over there. It needs to say, hey, here's me, here's my data in case you need to do anything with it. And now if I run, remember they're all springs. We changed these all to springs as an example. So we might be bouncing all over the place, right? Look at that. In real life, bouncing is a little bit lower each time. Like if you drop a ball, it'll go a little bit less and eventually down to nothing. But these have no friction or anything. We just made it super simple. I can still move, and I can say, okay, now we're bouncing on here and on here and on here, and then we fall, and guess what? The platform has no effect. So the ground is a platform, but when it says, hey, I need to do the effect whenever I land on something, the ground says I don't have an effect. So we need to make one even if it's nothing. If you ask, okay, go on YouTube and search for examples of this effect that we're doing. This concept is called polymorphism, where different types of objects all share the same interface. And their example is always animals. You can have the animal parent class, and then the subclasses are like dog, cat, whatever. If you ask them to speak, the dog will say bark, the cat will say meow, the pig will say oink. But then if you ask a quiet animal to speak, if you ask a snail, it still has to have a speak, even if it does nothing. So it has to have the interface. So the base platform is going to have an empty effect, because sometimes we'll need to ask it, what's your effect? Maybe the collision of like stopping would be built in. I don't know. So now let's go to the ground and just make sure that we get no error. Yeah, we just bounce normally, or we don't bounce at all, and now it works. But this is not what we wanted. This was just my weird example. We want the normal ones to still be normal, and then we want like one weird spraying off to the side. Or let's just make this guy, the bottom one, a spraying, and the other ones will be normal. So this one is that guy. Let's just make a spring. Later we could have a list of springs and keep them in a level data file or something, but right now I'll just make one unique spring. And well, here's the problem. I don't want to type all this stuff, right? I don't want to type where it is and how big. I'll do it once, but then we'll change things. Let's say 300, 400, I think 120 are the dimensions of these guys. And then we need a color. I'm thinking blue. I'm thinking it's like a dark blue. So let's go 0, 0, 255. Let's say like there's no R, there's no G, there's full B on the RGB scale. So if I run this, we need to put it in the list. And I'm an append hater, just like I'm an if hater. So in the final version, there probably won't be any appends, but for now, it'll get us going. So I can say, hey, look, the normal ones are normal. I'm not bouncing. But when I go on the spring, which is clearly indicated by its different visuals, then I do what a spring does. So let's make one more as an example, and then I'll let you make your own type, okay? Let's make one. Actually, I could put the color in here, which would be amazing, but then we'd have to change this. Let's change this real quick just to make it more convenient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make defaults. If we don't tell it, then it'll just go, okay, the standard is 100 pixels by 20, and the standard will be orange. So that these guys, we don't have to tell it that stuff at all. Nice and crisp. The best thing you can ever do in coding is just delete a chunk. Beautiful. And then if we have to tell it, okay, fine, we'll tell it. But I'll say, we'll make it the same size at least. So color equals that. Let me run it to make sure I haven't ruined anything. Great. So now when I make the next one, actually, what if we got that? Would that work? No, because the color over here is not overriding it. It would take a little more work. This is okay. We'll get there. Now let's make a lava, which will kill the guy. And the guy has a die method, but it's not really what we want. We'll have to rename these. Die is the dying from falling off, so if you fall off the edge, then it says that your Y is out of range, and then we respawn. So what I actually want is when I hit the lava, I respawn. So I'm going to call this method, even though it sucks. It's not really what I mean, and the name is not accurate, but just for the moment, we'll try it. So let's say when you touch the lava, you instantly die and you respawn where you were at the beginning. Now, again, I'm going to put color equals red. I think I have red defined at the top, but I'm also going to put it in the initializing, and we'll fix that later. Let's make one lava, which is, you know, close to the bottom. I'm not going to make it overlap with the bottom. It might get weird, but I'll have it close to the bottom. And then let's try that, and let's put it in here. Again, I'm an append hater. I don't like sticking things on a list with a pen. What's wrong with that? That's wrong with that. Okay, great. We got some lava over there. Let's see if we touch it and we die, but let's also test the other ones to make sure we didn't ruin them. Because sometimes when you change one thing, you mess with what had already been good. Okay, so when I fall down onto it, I die, and clearly that's a mess. We need to make it overlapping, or remove the ground, or do some nice, you know, design there, but it does work. When we fall onto it, we pop back at the beginning, and what I'd like to add is a little visual confirmation. When you die, there should be little sparks or a little explosion to catch your eye so that you don't just look, why am I in the middle, with no reason. If you've ever played Celeste or Super Meat Boy or those kind of games, you get a little splash death even if you're immediately back at the beginning of the room. So that's the end of this video. I'm going to ask you guys to make a new type of platform. It could be like shrinking the guy and you have to touch that if you want to sneak under something, or it could be moving the guy to a new location. If you want to add fancier stuff later, like an elevator that shifts up, that would take more lines of code and more testing, and honestly I'm not sure with the collision I have set up. Could we just move the platform and the guy will follow, or do we need to move both? We'll see what happens. But that's the general setup, and you notice that it's very simple. They have one method, and the color thing hasn't been set up yet, but we'll get that going. There's no if, and pretty soon there will be no append. I'm going to change those too because I don't like it. Thanks.